Parshas Truma. We find this week in the Parsha, Klal Yisrael rallying together to Moshe Rabbeinu's call to build a Mishkan. And there's a caveat, there's a t'nai, there's a condition in the gifting to the Mishkan. V'yikhu li Truma, you should take to me a Truma, as Rashi tells us, li lishmi. The gift has to be given purely altruistically for the sake of Shamayim, for the sake of connecting heaven and earth, for the sake of Hashem. Me'ez kol ish asher yidvenu liboy tikhu es trumasi. Only from those whose heart inspires them, they desire to give. Tikhu, from them shall you take es trumasi, my truma. And then the Torah delineates precisely all the necessary physical ingredients that were needed for the construction of the Mishkan: gold, silver, copper, and so on. But it's fascinating. The building of the Mishkan, the exterior, the structure of the Mishkan demanded and required these particular ingredients. But the essence of the Mishkan, that was toichoi rotzuf ahava. The Mishkan essentially was built on the ichud of Klal Yisrael, all of the Jewish people coming together with great love to give, to build a Mishkan. We know and we understand, koyach hapoil b'hanifel, when we build something, when we do something, when we speak something, we are transferring energy. And the energy that is a reflection of who we are is invested in that which we make and that which we do. And so Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, it's critical, it's essential, that the building of the Mishkan is built by Klal Yisrael only with Nedivus Lev, only with an absolute desire, lishmi, for my sake, a desire just to give to me. Why is that so important? Didn't the Mishkan, as a reflection of the entire world, didn't it serve a purpose unto itself? Why was the intent so important that it had to be invested? The Nedivus Lev, the Ahava. We think about it a little bit and we understand that the Mishkan was not simply a material, physical structure that the Jewish people were making, of course, with many deep Kabbalistic connotations. It was much more than that. The Mishkan is an olam cotton. It's a miniature world. Nisava HaKadosh Baruch Hu liyos lo dira b'tachtonim. Chazal tell us, the sages tell us, that Hashem desired to have a dira, to have a dwelling place b'tachtonim. We have a hard time getting our hands and our arms around that concept. We understand, lahavdil elef avdolos, of course. A rich person, he has a nice, beautiful pad, a nice apartment in a very hotsy-totsy area in Manhattan, and he lives there, and he's very important. And he desires at the same time to have in Palm Beach a house. He wants to have, then he spreads out his little portfolio. He has somewhere else, in some location, and as an aside, why not also in Yerushalayim? We'll have over there a nice little house just in case. You never know, Mashiach may happen to come. Okay, we'll do it in Herzliya, in Tel Aviv, but it has all over a house. The concept that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to have a dira b'tachtonim, of course, is entirely different. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need a dira, as Chazal tell us, it's meloi kol ha'oretz kavodah. But the purpose of our creation is to emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to be one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be one with us. Shutfim in brias shomayim va'oretz, partners in the building of heaven and earth. When we involve ourselves and connect to the Shabbos, we're emulating Hashem. As Chazal tell us, we're shutfim in the connecting of heaven and earth, the 6 days of the week and the Shabbos. And when we create and build in this world a Mishkan where Hashem resides, that's a miniature, it's a DNA, it's a structure of heaven and earth, We're connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the most intimate way possible. We're reflecting His presence down here in this world. The Pasuk tells us, V'asu li mikdash, make for me a mikdash. But there's one purpose in that mikdash. V'shachanti b'soichem. I will dwell within you. B'soich kol echad ve'echad. I will dwell within each and every one of you. I'll be one with you. Because just like the Mishkan is a reflection of the entire world, and when we rest on Shabbos, we rest from all those malachos that were necessary for the building of the Mishkan, and that reflects HaKadosh Baruch Hu's resting on Shabbos from all that was necessary for the building of the world. It's a miniature world, but really we're building our own miniature world. We're providing ourselves with an opportunity for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reside within us. We're a Mishkan. We, our body, as difficult as it may be for us to comprehend on a molecular level, but we are an olam cotton, a miniature world, and we have a heavens, and we have an earth, and we want to sync it all together. It should be perfectly aligned, and the divine presence should flow through us in an integrated, natural, flowing way. And when we live in that state, we are able to attain that state by the presence of the Mishkan. Building the Mishkan and having HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence reside amongst us afforded us an opportunity that v'shachanti b'soichem. V'asu li mikdash. Make for me collectively, plural. V'asuli, it's singular. V'asuli, and you shall make for me a mikdash. V'shachanti b'soicham, and I will dwell in each and every one of you. And there's an idea here that we need to develop a little bit. We need to understand it. You know, we always say that the wholesome, complete, and total spiritual person is one who is shalem im atzmoi, he's whole with himself. He's shalem im boirei, he's complete and whole and at peace with his creator. And he's shalem im chaverov, and he's at peace and at home and one with his social environment, with the people around him. Ben adam la'atzmoi, ben adam la'koine, ben adam la'chaverei. And initially, we may think that these are three separate chapters in our spiritual growth. We have to work on ourselves. We have to work on our relationship with Hashem. We have to work on our ben adam la'chaverei, to be nice to one another. But if we think about it, in truth, they are all holistically integrated. We have to be an adam hashalem. We have to be whole to ourselves. We have to be a reflection of the divine presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu down here in this world. We have to live in an illuminated state where the mind and the neshama flows through and controls our instincts, our animalistic instincts. We're a reflection of Adam Arishon, of Gan Eden Mikedem. Everything flows. There's an Eden and a Nahar and a Gan. There's an Oneg. There's an entire a composite that's a reflection of the bigger world. And in order to be whole with myself, it depends, obviously, I can only be whole, I can only remove that inner conflict when I'm whole with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I'm whole with my fellow man. Because if I'm in conflict with my Creator, if I don't have that total emunah and bitochen and serenity and desire to connect to my Creator, I seek independence. I seek to give expression to my own needs and my own wants and my own desires. I want to break free. Don't tell me what to do. And similarly, ben adam lachaverei, I'm not one with my fellow man. I seek independence. I seek my personal triumph. I want to win the game. Good guys finish last. Then I'm not whole with myself. Not everything is synced. Internally, I don't have my Mishkan. My Mishkan is complete when there's a ben Adam lakoinoi and a ben Adam lachaveroi. And so it was in the wilderness. The Mishkan, the building of the Mishkan, united all of Klal Yisrael. There was a tremendous connection to Hashem. It was a building that reflected Li Lishmi. We just wanted to be totally and altruistically one with Hashem when we built the Mishkan. And we wanted to be one with our fellow man. It didn't matter if I'm bringing the nechoshes and my friend is bringing the gold, because v'hoya ha-mishkan echad. It was an ichud of all of Klal Yisrael. There's no competition. It's the natural participation and the confluence of all the nishmos Yisrael building the Mishkan. V'asu li mikdash. And then v'shachanti b'sochem, then the divine presence shines and dwells in each and every one of us. How does that relate to us? That's very lofty ideas, very nice thoughts, but on a practical level, can we bring it down a little bit? Last week, my wife and I came back from Eretz Yisrael. It was a very inspiring trip. We were there for a pidyon ben of a grandson, very special. But there was encounters that we had that were very inspiring. We went to meet an aunt, a sister of my mother, a very exceptional woman in Bnei Brak. She's almost 90 years old. And she's the mother of some of the greatest Talmidei Chachamim perhaps in the world. Her son, Rav Osher Arieli, gives, I think it's the biggest shir in the world, probably, of people who are actually sitting in front of him when he says it, but in the Mir. She's an exceptional woman, a very, very great person. Just being in her presence, she's Imma Shel Malchus, just like her children. There's atzilus, aristocracy, dignity, joy, serenity. It's just the gadlus, the shchina in her little apartment there. But as a girl, she came to Eretz Yisrael. She was a young girl seeking to marry a ben Torah. She left her mother. Her father had passed away when she was a young girl of 8 years old. And she left the comfort of her mother's home and went to Eretz Yisrael with one purpose in mind, to marry a ben Torah, to marry someone she couldn't find in London, in England. She went to marry a ben Torah. She came to Eretz Yisrael in the early 50s and stayed with a great aunt, who was Mashadach, who introduced her to a great Talmid Chacham, Yitzchak Arieli. And they got married. And she described to me the deprivation of those early years, and there were many, in which there was nothing to eat. They lived, there was no fridge, no modern conveniences at all. They lived totally bereft of anything that we have today. That little propane flame upon which they had to cook everything. And at times, she said, there was so no money, they didn't have any bread in the house. There was nothing. And she came to her husband, she said, what should I do? I have no bread to buy for supper. Her husband stood up and he said, nothing will take me away from Torah. Imagine, he was such an edel, such a pure person, very great person. He said, do like the Vilna Gaon did. He sent the children to the neighbor during supper time, and there'll be some food, obviously, in the house. While the neighbor's serving the children, they'll serve our children as well. They won't feel anything. That's what she did. She was rummaging around in the house, and she found on the porch some bottles that, in those days you had a little deposit. She gave it back to the store. They were able to buy a small loaf of bread. And she's always happy. She beams and radiates joy in a very natural way. And I asked her, I said, how were you able to be happy and positive and impart such strong emotional vibes? It's impossible in today's generation to bring children up with a happy, emotional, solid constitution when there is such deprivation in the house. She said, she looked at me, she said, I don't know, such deprivation. I guess when you're young, it's easy. And on the way out, I looked at my wife. It was a very amazing encounter. what does that mean? When you're young, it's easy. I think when you're older and you face mortality and you're meeting one's creator, then perhaps one is able to meet things. Young people today, we want to, of course, we want to go to live in Israel and have a husband learning and, be learning. But at the same time, we'd like to have a nice apartment and we'd like to have all the mud cons and we'd like to have with every baby the latest fanciest stroller and Benetton, the latest designer clothes for the kids, and they should all match and everything should be just hotsy-totsy, perfect. We want to be there and we want to have it. How was she able to be completely devoted and dedicated? The answer is there was an element of love. She was living a dream. This was her dream. To be one with Hashem, to be one with His Torah. And therefore, all the material, physical deprivations, it wasn't a conditional relationship. That, yes, I'll do it if I'm in the mood, and if this jives, and if that is just perfect. It was a true li lishmi devotion. And therefore it was easy. There's nedivus lev, because there's a soul connection. A real connection, and therefore there's wonderful peirus. A real connection is a neshama connection. A guf connection is a conditional connection. It's a compatibility connection. A real connection is a neshama connection. There's nedivus lev. There's no conditions attached. There's toichu rotzuf ahava. And then a person, when they have that relationship with Hashem and that relationship with their fellows, there's no competition. There's neshama invested in the relationship. That's my essence. Then there's a reflection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu within us. We resemble the Mishkan. There's kuloi oir. I want to share with you an idea which has resonated within me the last week or two, but I think it's an important idea for us. We find a very fascinating phenomenon. Klal Yisrael in the Midbar built a Mishkan. And when they went into the land of Israel, they were instructed to destroy Amalek, to appoint a king, destroy Amalek, and build a Beis HaBchira, build a Beis HaMikdash. And yet, those important mitzvahs were pushed off for quite a period of time, what we call the era of the Shoftim, the judges. And we have from Osniel ben Kenaz, from Yehoshua, until Shmuel, a long list of great Shoftim, and we find Klal Yisrael swaying back and forth, reflecting the shofet that was in them, removing themselves a little bit from him, and then the Plishtim, the forces of the Philistines, overcame them, and then they came back to Hashem. And it's a very fascinating tkufa. In that period, we had the Mishkan, Noiv, Givoin, Shiloi, we're all familiar. The Mishkan went from place to place, but they didn't yet embark on their national mission of appointing a king, cleansing the land, building a Beis HaMikdash. And when they were ready to do that, Shmuel rebuked them. When they asked for a king, we find Shmuel telling them off, as if there was something wrong with that. And we have to understand that the era of the Midbar and the Mishkan was a very unique and special era. And it spilled over into the entry of Klal Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael for the period of the Shoftim. What was the difference between a Shofet and a Melech? Clearly, a Shofet seemed to be in some level even greater than a king. Here we have the king, the greatest of the great, David HaMelech, the Roya Yisrael, David Melech Yisrael, Chai v'Kayim. We live with his inspiration. And yet, on some level, the period of the Shoftim seems to have been even greater. And they were told off asking for a king. It was as if Shmuel was saying, is there something wrong with me? There's a special opportunity when there's a Shofet and a Mishkan, which isn't there when there's a Melech and a Beis HaMikdash. What is that? And in a nutshell, maybe we will elaborate upon this a little bit more in another time, but in a nutshell, we have to understand that the purpose of a shofet wasn't the same as a melech. The shoftim of Klal Yisrael, they were a shofet al atzmam. They reflected the totality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in this world. They were a gibor chayil. There was the mind over body. They had total menuchas hanefesh. And their very presence amongst Klal Yisrael infused Klal Yisrael with an ability to emulate them and realize their own level of personal shofet. When the Mishkan was there in Klal Yisrael, we do not find in Shoftim Klal Yisrael streaming to the Mishkan as they did when it was built in Yerushalayim. Hashem Yeroeh, Lirois V'Leirois, all of Klal Yisrael came, Shalosh Pa'amim Bashana. In the Mishkan we find those that came when they needed to bring korbanos, Yoldos, Nedorim, Nedovos, but there wasn't a national surge to be there within the Kroim, within the confines of the Mishkan, or in the Chatzar HaMishkan. Its very presence illuminated all of Klal Yisrael. You know, we find at the beginning of Yisro, the Jewish people stood on Moshe min haboka ad ha'erev. And the Pasuk tells us and describes Yisro came and he wanted to create this automated system, this hierarchy. And the Sfarim tell us it's true. Moshe Rabbeinu listened to Yisro, but something was lost. Why were the Jewish people standing on Moshe from morning to night? The Ramban gives us various reasons. Moshe Rabbeinu was able to provide them with a clarity of their life mission. But in a greater sense, the Sfarim tell us, just being in the presence, the umbrella of Moshe Rabbeinu in his radiance was so illuminating. There's no longer any doubt. I'm realigned, something so perfect now. You know, we all have inner conflict and things that pull us. There's a dom ladom and a din ladin. We're pulled in different directions. There's divrei rivois bisharecha. There are all inner conflicts. And when we're in the presence of light, everything is clear. My Rebbe told me in the Sivas Shalom that he had many questions, fundamental questions that he wanted to ask the Satmar Rebbe about his shitta, about his opinion in terms of the establishment of the state. And he said he went to him 2 or 3 times, and every time when he was in his presence, it became so clear, he had no more any questions. Because in the presence of a tzaddik, there's light, there's shechina, there's a mishkan, and it automatically, by osmosis, it has a pulse and rays. When the Mishkan was there, the Machne Levia, the Mishkan was in the presence of Klal Yisrael. It was a Mishkan ha'edus. It gave edus to Klal Yisrael. It was testimony to the presence of Hashem. And it afforded an opportunity for all of Klal Yisrael to be a miniature Mishkan, v'shochanti b'soicham. And that's the absolute ideal. The reality as we engage the material world is that we need a melech, a king that shows us a pathway, that bal yidach mimenu nidach, he draws us all close, that we physically have to pick ourselves up and leave everything behind and insulate ourselves and bring ourselves into the holy city of Yerushalayim with our bikurim and with our korbanos and each yantaf in order to realign and then take it back home. But an even more pristine state was the original state of Klal Yisrael. How do we attain just a measure? Obviously, this is very lofty and very high, a very exalted level. But how do we attain some level of Mishkan internally, feeling connected, inner serenity, a clarity of values, at peace with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at peace with our fellow man? That's what we all desire, ultimately. And the yesod that we see in this parasha is, Me'ez kol ish asher yidvenu liboy. We need to have nedivus lev, an ahava. I think about it. My aunt, she had a total devotion and dedication. This is what she wanted. She was living her dream. And so all the deprivations and difficulties weren't really felt. She didn't have expectations and needs and creature comforts that had to be met because she's living her dream. She was one with her dream. If our dream is, our ultimate goal, our Olam Haba dream, to be one with Hashem, and we're driven by that dream, then all the things that pull us away and distract us fade into the background. They're much more easy to overcome when we are living our dream, Retzonenu lirois es malkeinu. We want to be one with Hashem. We want to build a Mishkan. Hashem should help us. We should all experience the V'shochanti B'socham, each on our own level, B'soch kol echad ve'echad. Good Shabbos.
Amen. Amen.